And appropriately,
is this the end of the beginning? Or the beginning of the end?
well, enough of that. Jonathan was going to give this talk here. I wish he could have been, because I really would have seen that talk, but due to circumstances beyond his or our control, he decided not to be here. So I'm going to give you something instead. I consider myself a relative newbie to the Pro 6 effort, because contrary to what Mark just said, really I've been there at the very beginning. I'll get back to that. I've been there somewhere in the middle, but mostly I've been here only the past 3.5 years. So a lot of insights that Jonathan would be able to give you about the process before I got involved as well. Sorry, I can't give you that, so I'm not going to try. Instead, I'm going to give you a little bit about myself, because I'm selfish. In 1994, I started using Perl for web development. We actually were the first DevOps company in the Netherlands. Well, DevOps didn't exist as a term yet, but basically we were DevOps. And actually I solved my first Perl project without actually having learned the language. Must be common, I think, in the world, because Perl is something that you very easily learn. One of the things I did in that days were get actually the first flight information system of the world online, and that was very good. And I still had red hair then, yes. One of the things I developed a little later was something called LizPerl. It actually PHP-like templating. And like many templating engines, they were a rite of passage, but this actually ran many websites until well into the 2000s. And before there was OnePerl, it actually was used to generate PHP code. So you could actually get the benefits of PHP with regard to efficiency and processing, and still use Perl. I like that very much. I'm so glad that never made it to CPAC. From a security point of view, not good. Not good. Not good. Anyway, this went on for a bit, and all of a sudden I find myself in charge with Wendy of a company of 45 people, which basically was no fun anymore. So we decided to sell the company, because we actually could not make it work anymore with the two of us. So somebody bought it, and I felt it was time for me to give back to the community, because until then I basically had been a consumer of Perl. So we started attending conferences and Perlmonger meetings, and I actually was at the camel herders meeting right after the mug throwing incident. I didn't know what to expect from it, but yeah, I was there. I sat next to Ilya Zakharevich.
Oh God.
Yes. Who actually we'll come back to later. In a small way. In 2000, basically the dot-com bubble burst, which was very bad for us because we got paid in shares. So at the end of 2000, or slightly later, we actually did not actually have a lot to give anymore. In 2001, we co-organized the Yapse Europe in Amsterdam. Oddly enough, years later, this provided funds for the Yapse Europe Foundation.
Because we made a profit.
Yes. Why did we make a profit? Because the caterer and the venue in 3 years did not manage to send us an invoice. So there you go. And because we couldn't afford our house in Amsterdam anymore, we moved to Prague. In 2002, I worked on a fuzzy search engine project, which eventually became something called Castle. It was very Unicode oriented with an XML interface, fully threaded. There I learned to actually debug threaded C programs, and that's why I don't want to do that anymore. But this all fell apart when the funds dried up. In 2003, I did a lot of testing of iThreads and IO layers before 5.8 came out, and I drove Jarko pretty crazy because I just found so many problems that it was postponing the release date again and again. I started writing thread modules for CPAN, and so I felt I was finally giving back to the community. So while I did a lot of threads, one day on Perl Monks I wrote this little article. Things you need to know before programming iThreads. The basic premise of this is that Perl iThreads are not lightweight. Because iThreads, basically, how many copies of a shared variable does Perl 5 iThreads keep? n+1, where n is the number of threads running. This is not what you would call shared normally. But yeah. This is because everything lives in a local copy in the thread. So there is no copy on write. So one of the reasons for that is that I decided to write forks. Actually, it just started as a joke, because iThreads is basically using the fork emulation that was made for Windows to do threads. So I wrote forks to do the threads emulation using fork. Yeah, okay. Basically, it just forks for you, and basically talks over pipes to each thread in between. And as with iThreads, each shared variable lives n+1 times in memory, but at least the startup is a lot faster. And this is actually the only Perl 5 module anybody thanked me for in person, ever. So I was pretty proud of that. By Christmas 2003, we basically were out of funds completely. We were about to get the electricity off, so maybe I should just do some work instead of playing around. So I started working for this hotel reservation startup in Amsterdam.
It was not a startup anymore.
Well, felt like a startup anyway. One of the things I did was I allowed the ORM to handle master and slave databases. When I got there, they were using Class DBI, which was state of the art at the moment, at that time. But Class DBI at that time did not support more than one database handle for a class. So what these people were doing at that point was we write a class for the master and we write a class for the slave, which is not good. So I basically do that. As a side effect of that, they're still stuck with this version of Class DBI. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry.
Happy with that.
Also reworked the Perl 5, essentially unscalable availability system to a scalable Perl 5 solution. And I implemented a new hotel interface with extended logging. One of the problems that bookings had at that point was one would send out the reservation to the hotel, and the hotel would call, hey, I got this reservation for 50 euros for this room, but the price is 100, look in the system. And sure enough, there was 100 in the system. Except that after the extended logging was implemented, we could see that they changed it after they received the reservation. So that saved a lot of money. In 2005, I got pulled into Perl 6 by Audrey, like many others, I think. And she specifically wanted me to write the async parts of the synopsis as 17. I dabbled a little bit in it, went completely crazy, really. Software transactional memory, anyone? It was interesting, but anyway, I drifted away because there were more urgent matters for me. That was basically bookings was taken over by Priceline. And Priceline was a Java shop. Active Hotels, which was another acquisition by Priceline that had been bought by them a year earlier, was a Java shop. Active Hotels actually was in the UK. Bookings was Perl. The people in Active Hotels decided, okay, well, we were here first in Europe, you're going to be using that Java like we do. Well, I didn't like that. So I worked very hard for 3 weeks, and in those 3 weeks we were able to sell all of the hotels on the booking site. Basically doubling the inventory, basically doubling the turnover in 3 weeks. This was very important because it allowed bookings to grow like it did. And basically, does anybody still know Active Hotels?
No.
Exactly. They're gone. So, I think this is about Perl, but this is also about the people using Perl. Because people using Perl are much more agile than people using Java, is my thesis. And agility is what we need. Anyway, while this is all going on, Wendy decided, well, maybe we should just start collecting books. It's sort of got out of hand, so, yeah. We started to take our camel for a ride. Basically putting up booths at Perl events and non-Perl events. And we had a lot of stickers, buttons, and to its made. Anyway, by 2012, I basically had enough of working for this startup in Amsterdam. But I'm proud of actually helping it to grow like it did and make it do the right open source thing. A company of 5,000 people is not the same as a company of 35. And sometimes people ask me, don't you want to come back to Booking? I said, yes, but that Booking does not exist anymore. So, there you go. But anyway, all of this turned out pretty good for us financially, so it allowed me to concentrate on other things. So from 2012 onwards, we started supporting Perl 5 and Perl 6 even more by actually organizing meetings, do a lot of sponsoring, and do a lot of guerrilla marketing. One of the things that I've realized in 2012 is that Perl 5 and Perl 6 have really diverged. The communities have really diverged. And I really thought that Perl well, needs a future. This is very selfish, I'll get back to that. So I started actively to support the Perl 6 effort. I don't think I actually supported Perl 6 before that. Alright? I don't think so. But anyway, so one of the things we organized was the Perl Reunification Summit in the town of Perl. We also nicked the station sign.
It's at home.
It sits at home. It was too big to bring here. I had high hopes of it, but in the end, I guess the real thing about this was that we had a good time together. I thought that was really important at that point in time. In 2013, we organized the Rakudo and NQP Internals workshop, which is a 2-day workshop for teaching you how to work with Rakudo and NQP and the internals of that. We had it in Frankfurt for 2 days. It was actually material for a week, we found out. But yeah. If you want to, oh, you can't read that, really. Anyway, it's on GitHub. If you want to find out where I live, contact me and we'll figure it out. Sorry, I need to, before this goes away. Oh, there we go. We started setting up booths in many places. So far we've set up booths in these countries. Spain, Japan, yeah, we go all there. We've given away lots of free Perl 5 and Perl 6 stuff. 35,000 tuits, 30,000 stickers, 80,000 buttons, 4,800 pens, 400 badge extenders, and lots of goodies from other Perl companies. We found when we were at conferences that a lot of people, a lot of companies that use Perl actually had some swag that they wanted to give away, but they actually never took home with them. So we started collecting those and basically use those whenever we have a table with Perl stuff.
WD-40.
So yeah, strange things like, what was it again? It was a WD-40 pen.
Yes.
Yeah. And we also sold a lot of Perl 5 and 6 stuff at cost. We actually sold about 1,500 stuffed camels by now. about 1,500 Perl-related books. Well, by definition at this point in time, still 5. We have 300 bottles of Prosecco wine. They are on sale actually, you can buy them. 100 t-shirts from various events, and we actually sold $50 development patches like this. I don't know if you can see that. Okay, well there you go. It's a patch. You can actually put it in your place or actually hit it on it or whatever. They cost $50, and we sold 40 of them, and we actually doubled the amount when we sent the money to TPF. So, what I'm saying, camels, right? Lots and lots of camels. Yeah, we had a suitcase of camels in Oslo, and that's where they wound up. Anyway, so am I thinking about retirement? Well, am I going to stop coding after making a living with it for 35 years? And all the time it never actually felt like work? Nah, it's boring. So I'm very selfish in that sense. So I already had seen 2 languages die in which I had been fluent. Tutor and Tankmore. Who knows it? Who knows these languages? Nobody. I don't think anybody knows about them here.
I think you've told me that.
Yeah. So I wanted to be able to do nice programming, multi-core parallel programming in a language that I would not have to learn from scratch. So Perl 6 seems to fill that bill. And why Perl 6? Well, Perl 5, since I started using iThreads in 2003 until now, Perl 5 has not been able to fix the basic problem with it. It's still the same issue. Especially if you want to use moose-based stuff, iThreads basically will kill you. I mean, you're looking at startup times of several seconds every time you start a thread. So it's basically useless, except maybe if you use forks, but yeah. Perl 6 has Greek concurrency now, so we have simple, understandable primitives, and we want to take away the locks. So you don't have to worry about it. We will worry about it. So the inevitable happened. In May 2013, I got a commitment. I have the most commits reverted, yes. But it's easier to ask for forgiveness than it is for permission. So. What have I done in that time? I actually worked on hash array slices and adverbs on them, is default and is cached traits. Is cached actually bit the dust because it's not quite working as we hoped it would. So it's now become experimental and actually is not in Perl 6 Christmas, unless you automate it. Extended sets, backs, and mixer support. The deprecated mechanism I implemented the tiny data dumper. It's so tiny that it doesn't have the T in there. A lot of methods on supplies, lots of optimization work, lots of thoughts on these things. It's use command basically. This is I/O. This is async concurrency, and this is package format. I wrote a lot of tests, and I did a lot of cage cleaning. So there we are now. Perl 6, well, somewhere between 19th and 25th we'll see a Perl 6.0, whatever you call it. It's an abomination to view. Some people want to throw it away, but there you go. It's a system language the most, and I think it's the future for Perl to me. So I would say, get ready to party. The wine is over there. You can get it. Because it's all Perl to me. I think Perl is really the mindset. I've said it before. Many people program Perl in other languages, and I know at least here there are one person who has never programmed in Perl, or hardly. It just comes in with the fun. So what changes with Christmas? Basically, we guarantee you now that we won't break your code intentionally. we never gave that guarantee before, well, guarantee. And we're going to actually shift our emphasis to making it work correctly and fast. All of these have been done now. That's the energy, the NSA, the GLR, SSR, and Perley. That's the normalization form graphene, native shaped arrays, the great list refactor, the small supply refactor, and the comp unit repo local installation. There you go. So, what version of Pill 6? Well, it's going to be V6C at Christmas. And most likely we'll keep that same version for the rest of the year, although we're going to have monthly compiler releases. So you can use V6C in your code to indicate I'm working with this version of Pill 6. And we guarantee you that we will not intentionally break your code. So like I said, we're going to have monthly compiler releases, bug fixes, performance improvements, some feature enhancements, filling in stuff that we didn't get around to before Christmas, but we're staying on the same language level. So what does Recruiter give you? Well, this. You can take one if you want. Why, you can't really read this, can you? Anyway.
I wrote it.
But one of the few points that I'm actually that we mentioned in this list here, I'm going to now elaborate on while I'm sitting down to deal with my thingy. So let's go. Interoperability. If you're in Pill 5, you can use Pill 6 with inline Pill 6. If you're in Pill 5, you can use inline Python. If you're in Pill 5, you can actually do Perl to Pill 6. Q, Jeff, which basically will convert your Pill 5 source code using PPI. Yep. Okay. To Pill 6, as much as it can. If you're already using Pill 6, you can use inline Pill 5 to run any of your Pill 5 code. This includes anything with access. Actually, every inline Pill 5 object that you make in Pill 6 has its own interpreter, which basically means that you would be technically able to do more async stuff in inline Pill 6 with your inline Pill 5 code. In Pill 6 we have native call, which is basically the old name of that was Zavalai, if that rings a bell with anybody. It allows you to interface with any C or C++ library that you have. And you don't have to actually write any C or C++ code for it. The only thing you need to do is basically say, this library has this subroutine, this is the interface to it, and it lives in that library. And there you go. And of course we have inline Python also. Inline Perl 5, inline Perl Python, and inline Perl 6 and inline Python were made by Stefan Seifert. And he's been great at getting this So, grammars. Well, Steve already said something about grammars. Dr. Ford just gave a presentation about grammars. I'm not so good with grammars yet myself yet. So I'm very glad to refer to them, and I will skip that for now. Thank you very much. But you should realize grammars are regex and on steroids. I think that's already proven. And you should realize that Perl 6 code is parsed using grammars. We actually have a grammar for Perl 6. Graphemes. Well, what are they? Why is it so shifting? Anyway, this is a way to actually specify Unicode characters by name. So we actually have an A here, and a compiling dot above, and a compiling dot below. So that looks like this. Now, if you look at it as an NFD, which is normalization form decomposed, which is basically takes it apart as much as possible, we actually see 3 code points here. But if you ask how many characters does it have, it is 1 character and it's 2 codes. Why 2 codes? Because internally it basically uses NFC, which is composed, and for the Latin capital letter A with dot below, we actually have a separate code point, this one. So, even though this looks to us like 1 character, in most languages where you would look at this, this would be multiple characters because it doesn't actually know how to handle the additional code points. The new line is a special case. It's also a synthetic. Oh, by the way, yeah, we call this a synthetic code point. So, character return line feed is 1 character. Which basically means that you can actually easily check for it in regular expressions, and you don't have to worry about it. It's one thing, it's a logical new line. It's still 2 codes, and it will tell you that it has actually 2 things in it. It's only 1 character. This is very important for handling things in regular expressions, where you could have a difference between, okay, a character tune and a new line. Is that a character tune and a new line, or is that just? It's very, very easy to have. Now, Recruiter Pull 6 has very complete support for Unicode, and it's been in strange corners. And one of those strange corners are the so-called regional indicator symbols, which basically means you can have letters of a very specific range, and when combined in the right way, they will actually produce the flag of that country. I'm not making this up. Now, the nice thing about this is at compile time, of course. So, yeah. In this case, we actually have a space in between, and we're just removing it. And Pull 6 is smart enough to realize that when you remove that, it is actually only 1 character, and it is that flag. So, and of course, you can do the next, which would be Irish and so on. So, yeah. So, removing the basically calling a substitute on this like that. So, okay, enough about Unicode. Roles. We had roles earlier today, I think. I'm going to more. So, what is a role? Well, basically, this is a role. It's just basically a block. You give it a name, and you put attributes in there, and you can put methods in there that you want. And you can actually, what we call turning it into a class. So you can actually, even though it is not a class, it's a role, you can actually use it as a class. And yeah, now I got some animal that we don't know anything about except that it barks. So if you bark it, let it bark 3 times, it actually knows that it's back. Right? So classes are the same way. You would say class, and if you want to have it, the dog able to bark, you say does bark. And it will actually add the bark and barked methods to you. And you can specify that you have a public, the dot means a public one, and then it is required that you should specify it. And you can say, okay, there's another one for, and if you don't specify it, it's boolean. So that's the only thing that you need to do to actually create a class. Nothing more, nothing less. There's no methods, other methods that you need to specify, because by default, there will be a new that allows you to specify name variables. Name parameters, sorry. So that will create a dog object, if you want to actually show that. Interpolation in Pull 6 is very interesting. You can actually have method names called inside the interpolation as long as it's clear that it isn't a method by actually having the parents after it. That's how you do that. So if this says, let it bark, and you can actually say, okay, this is another way of interpolating. Any piece of code you can put between curlies in your interpolation. So it's very easy to work with this. But roles are not only at compile time, they are also at runtime. So you can actually create an anonymous role. Look, there's no name. Just put a method in it. And it will be applicable to this object, which otherwise is an int. So if I just save that variable, say implies that you call gist on it. It will call the gist from this anonymous role, so it will say 0. And if you would put it inside a string or any other way, it will just basically call the .stir, which basically still means 0. You can actually also mix in enums. This is a special case. 3 equals 1, but false. So if you ask for it like that, it's 1. If you ask for a booleanification of it by prefixing, for instance, prefixing it with a question mark, it actually will tell you that it is false, which you would expect normally to be true. So the fact that you can mix in stuff at runtime is also very powerful, very important. People will find ways of messing with this.
One but several.
Yes, it would be. Yes. There you go. Obfuscation all around. You give plenty of rope to shoot yourself with. So, there's a thing called typing in POL6, and it's gradual. What does that mean? Well, if you're not interested in typing, don't use it. Just say, make it a variable, and if you ask what are you, it will say, well, I'm anything. I don't know, I'm anything. If you put an integer into it, it will be an int after that. If you put a string into it, it will be a string after that. There you go. If you mark it as an integer, then it will actually tell you, well, I'm an int. I'm not sure what value I have. That's basically a type object. But if you assign to it, it will work because it is an int. And if you try to assign a string to it, it will actually fail. So why would you do this? Well, maybe you want to know if somebody puts in something wrong and you get an error before you actually do wrong stuff with it. Of course, you can actually use your own type, so you can create a dog variable in which you can put a dog object. And of course, this has dog in here twice. We don't need that. So you can actually say, if this is a type variable, you can actually use the dot equals new, which basically means call dog, not new, call it new on a class that of this variable.
Thank you.
Multi-dispatch. You've heard about it. Here's the nitty-gritty on it. We want to create something that uses multi-dispatch. You prefix it multi, and you specify a signature, for instance, like here, int, and if that matches, if the parameter matches the variable there, it will actually use this candidate. The other multi-sub actually accepts a dog, and it will bark twice. So if I call foo with 42, I get this as a string. If I call foo with a dog, it will actually bark twice. And if I call foo with tau, it will be compile error, because at compile time, recruiter POL6 can already determine that this will never work, because there's no candidate that matches this. And by the way, if anybody wonders what tau is, it's the whole new thing in mathematics. Apparently it's 2 times pi. people would like to have that in the language, and since it was like a minimal addition, I guess we did that. Well, I was convinced that it would be a good idea. It's yet another thing that other languages don't have. There you go.
It's not noticed.
So asynchrony, the implicit version of it is very simple. We call this a hyper. This greater than dot. There's actually Unicode Guillemets character for that. I personally have more trouble finding that on my keyboard than typing greater than, so I'm always using this one. Basically, it calls the method on all of the elements in the list. The order of the results will be the correct order, but you will not be guaranteed that they will be executed in order. Right? So this gives Recruitable 6 the possibility of saying, okay, you want to do this on 1,000 elements, I'm going to split this up in 4 times 250. And then give you the result. There's nothing else you have to do for this. This is automatic. If it can run in parallel, it will. At the moment, it doesn't yet. But that's one of the things that we're looking at for next year, after Christmas, to actually make work. The other one is basically junctions. Anybody remember quantum superpositions by Damon Conway? Well, junction is now in Build 6. Very easy with the pipe. So A equals foo, or bar, or bad. The junction does not guarantee that they will be checked in order. They will be checked in any order, and the results will be returned to you. And if you basically already have a list with the strings in here, you can say any that. It's basically the same as this. Oh, by the way, this is a shortcut for QW in Build 6. The same syntax you use for slices as well on hashes. So it's all more thought out, I think. Sorry. Another thing that is more specific, explicit asynchrony is the promise. Promise basically is given by a start block. The start block will basically execute this in another thread. And it gives you back a promise. So I will make this start, I make it wait a little bit, I say work is done, and I return the result. So this gets executed, I get a promise, I say I gave the order, I'm awaiting the response. This will block until this is finished or died. Right, so this is running asynchronously, and we're waiting here until this is finished. And then we can find the result. And this is how it looks. Now, of course, gave the order and starting work, those might actually be switched around. I've not seen it happen, but it could. There's probably some overhead in starting up this thing, so this one always gets here first. But so let's do a very simple async one-liner using start. To a point. Let's just do a one-liner. Let's take all the values from 0 to 9, inclusive, which is what this is, and map it to a start block that waits a bit and then prints the value we got. Dot print is short for $_print, and basically allows you to make this work. So how does it look? Well, okay, it doesn't look anything good. We are waiting the result of this, so the map gives back 10 promises, and the await will wait until all promises are kept or broken. And since we use time here, it will actually show you this and then time. Now, what is funny about this is that if you're looking at the sleep rand, this is a random number between 0 and 1. So on average, this should wait half a second. We've got 10 of them, so if you would run this serially, this would take 5 seconds. This only took less than a second in this case. So it may be using more CPU for you, but it might be actually faster, if you have enough CPUs, of course. And the latest thing in PIL6 is react and whenever. React, we'll get to that. One of the things that we have in PIL6 is our channels. This is basically in PIL5 the thread queue. Basically, you have one thread that throws in the stuff, and you have other threads that pull it out. Here we're going to actually start up a little async block. We have a promise here called done sending. We're going to print. For 1 to 10, we're going to actually sleep a random amount, and then basically send this on the channel. Put this in the queue. When that's done, we're going to close the channel. Now this is all part of one script, right? I had to put it sideways, so you can better understand this. React basically gets into a loop for you, in which you won't get out until it's really done. All of the whenevers in there, you can guarantee that they will trigger as soon as something happens. In the case of a channel, if somebody sends a value on it. Right? In the case of a promise, I'll get to that later. But this is a very easy way for you to handle events coming in. Whenever it happens, it will send $_. You can actually do stuff with that if you want to. And this will go on until the channel closes. In that case, because the system knows this is a channel, it knows that this particular loop will not run anymore because the channel is done. And the last phaser you can actually use to indicate code to be executed whenever you're done with this loop. This is one of the features of PIL6 we have. In PIL5 you have begin and end and stuff like that. In PIL6 you have lots and lots more phasers. One of them is the last phaser. Any loop construct that you have, you can put in the last phaser and it will run whenever it is you're exiting the loop, either through the last command or because the for expired. And in this case I'm also calling done here. And done basically means, tells the React, I'm done. Right? So it will actually exit the React and continue onward. Here we have another whenever that takes the promise that we made here. And whenever that promise is kept, this piece of code will trigger. And we'll basically say, I'm not sending, I'm not doing anything else. PIL6 will guarantee that there will only be one whenever running in any React block. So if you're putting stuff into a hash or an array, you can do it within the whenever block because you are sure that there won't be any other threads doing it at the same time and messing up your hashes and arrays. Because in PIL6, hashes and arrays are not thread safe on purpose. Because that's one of the big delays in PyThreads. All of the locking that's happening because you try to do the right thing. In PIL6, we're not trying to do the right thing here. You have to do the right thing, but we give you the tools to make it easy for you to do the right thing. So then the final result looks something like this: sending, receiving, then whatever. Because this delays and this delays. So we get the done sending in between, then the final one is here, and then we're done processing. This is how easy it is for you to make an interactive program. What I didn't show here is, for instance, use of supplies. Supplies you can specify in the whenever as well, and a supply could be something like an async IO socket or an async IO file, IO handle. It could be a signal, could be a supply. You can make your own supplies that go out and do some stuff, whatever. And you can put this all in the whenever and the React, and it will work and do the right thing for you. So this concludes my talk about the features. So Can you expect in 2016? Better optimizations. There's two stuff in that we have in more VMs called Spesh, and the other thing is Git. Spesh I still don't really have wrapped my head around, but basically it annotates the code while it's running. So it knows, oh, you're doing this loop like now 100 times, maybe I should optimize it. And stuff like that. So it's not a static optimization, it's a runtime optimization handler. Spesh already runs in Rakudo. It does it all the time yet. All of the information that we get from it is not yet used to actually optimize. And that's one of the things we're looking at next year. And we also have to have some progress on macros, but I just double checked with Jonathan. We're not promising this is going to happen in 2016. So, there you go. So, my conclusion is, it's ready to be tried. It's ready for the early adopters. It is a 0.0 release. People will find problems with it. We're pretty sure of that. We know of problems that we still need to fix, but there you go. You have to have some point in time where you say, okay, this is now for the masses. Well, small masses. Tool 6 has been a massive project, and we had many setbacks and rewrites, and I think the proper way of describing this is 6 systems done right. Why 6th? If you look at the number of tries of implementation of tool 6, I think this is actually the 6th. So, there you go. For the release, in sometime in the next 10 days, we have a list of contributors, which you can't read here.
I've seen one, I know.
That one, yeah. Yeah, and there's, where is it, Jonathan is up here, down here somewhere.
You got the
Gisela Aas is up there. If you think that you've contributed and you want to have your name in that list, please check it. We can still add you now. There have been people, well, one, who actually actively asked for his name to be removed. We can do that too. We'd rather not do that, but yeah, we can do that. So yeah, let us know if you have your name missing there, and you can still fix it. So, thank you for listening.